Hey friends, I've got more vintage Americana flips. I've got a previous video with several great ideas, and here comes some more. This rustic flag pillow turned out so cute. I started with drop cloth and traced several little stars and a big star onto the drop cloth, and I will suggest to you that if you're going to do this project, find something that's a little bit tighter weave than the drop cloth, because drop cloth is very loosely woven and it wanted to fray, and I'm okay with fraying, but it made it a challenge to embroider the edges, which is exactly what I did. You can see I used a little bowl to get my stars lined up exactly right. Did you notice what the blue background is? Well, of course, it's pieces of blue jean leg. I love the rustic look of that. And I did use a very pale gold thread to do a blanket stitch around the edges. There are other tutorials on YouTube, not by me, that would explain to you how to do a blanket stitch better than I could explain it. But you can see that the frayed edge, it's a little too loose in my opinion. I wouldn't dare wash this. So I found red ticking stripe fabric. I found mine at Hobby Lobby. Most fabric stores are going to have it. And I decided, let's just do a really no-sew, simple kind of application here. And you can see I'm using hot glue. So I mean, you probably could wash it and the hot glue would hold, but I think the loose weave of that drop cloth would not keep the stars intact. Did you notice that I ripped my fabric instead of cutting? Because I wanted that little frayed edge. In order to rip something and get it to tear straight, all you have to do is cut a little 1/4 inch notch, or not a notch, just a little slit, a little nip at the edge of your fabric, and then tear, and it will go along the weave of your fabric and tear straight. Now you can see that my pieces are not exactly straight. They're not doing the best in the world as far as lining up with each other, but I was okay with that, for them to be a little offset and a little overlapping, that kind of thing, because I felt like it would kind of add to the whole look. Now I used a bed pillow that had gone flat, and I just fluffed it up and tore off the correct size amount that I needed, and it works just fine. That's the way I get most of my pillow stuffing, unless I go to the thrift store and buy a 99-cent pillow just for its pillow insert. Find a pillow that has a zipper. This one is so cute to me. I love the denim touches. I love the frayed edges. And the little stars are just precious. I haven't yet made the other one, but July is a long month. I may do it. Now, framed book art. This is one of my favorite ways to make really pretty little framed pieces. I found the Golden Book of America, and it was already cut when I found it. Someone else had already done it. I'm showing you here where that ship picture was in the book. And this beautiful double page, I would love to find 2 frames and put those together as well. But I just think that that is beautiful and such a special touch. My frame didn't have glass in it. Most of the time I prefer not to have glass. I don't like the glare. I don't like dust on it. So that just turned out ever so cute. I love that. Now I'm always on Pinterest, and even when going through Facebook, I've got a lot of ads that come up, and this was an ad that came up for an online shop, and I thought those were adorable. And then I saw these that said 1776, and so I decided I'm just gonna have to make some tiny little pillows. I think they call them bowl fillers. Now these stamps, these number stamps, I got from Temu, and I've cut out little pieces of drop cloth and I used my acrylic base. I think those came from Amazon. And as you'll see, I'm not using ink. I'm just using acrylic paint. You just dab it on, and especially for something that's rustic or primitive looking, this is absolutely adequate. Absolutely great. Now, it bugs me to have to redo, not to have 2 sevens and have to shift it over, but it's fine. It can be done, and I'm doing it. If you could see for my crazy hair. Okay, this one I realized the 6 didn't have enough depth on it, not enough paint, so I just added a little, and I started putting it together just the way I did the bigger pillow, when it occurred to me, hey, I was going to put some red stars on this, and I certainly do not have a red star on there yet. So what I ended up doing was finding a star that I liked the shape of. I literally laid a piece of tissue paper. No, that wasn't tissue. This one is the clear acrylic, just the piece that came with my rubber stamps. And I traced it over, laid it over my tablet, and then traced it out, cut it with an X-Acto knife. And then there I have an instant little correct sized, correct shaped stencil of my own that I just used a little sponge pouncer. You see, I'm using the flat bed pillow stuffing again, and I can get it down into the corners and the edges more easily with the end of my scissors. So after I get that glued, I peel off the extra threads from the edges, and that makes a nice fringe, little frayed, ruffly edge, which I think is so cute. These were very simple and very quick. I ended up putting these in my basket in the middle of my dining room table, and that little basket has been so fun to style because I can just include all of my current little favorite things, including the hydrangea that was dried from my daughter's wedding like 10 years ago. Isn't that beautiful? The painted basket. While watching a channel about primitive decor, you can see it's a little blurry because I took a screenshot and I zoomed in on this one particular basket, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to do that. And then one of you, my lovely friends, sent me a picture of the crafts that you had done using some of my templates and things, and I loved that. So I found this little basket already in my house that was dark, and I think dark works better because it also gives a depth. Can you hear my grandchildren in the background? Their parents are on a mission trip, and I have had baby duty for lots and lots of days, so I'm just having to do this with grandchildren. But as you can see, I used acrylic paint, blue on the outside, red on the inside, and it really turned out sweet. And I'm so glad that I saw that video that inspired me and decided to do one of my own. Now, the primitive box. Well, mine is a round, thin wood currant box. But look at these originals that I found on Pinterest. Now that's just gorgeous. I love that so much. And those are thicker, heavier duty boxes than what I found. This is the pattern that I ended up using. And I love the irregular, primitive nature of it. You might remember when I did a thrift haul and showed you this little thin box with the bears on it that I didn't care for, so I sanded the bears off. And then in order to get the pattern, I did something that I've just recently begun doing. I put a piece of tissue paper over my tablet and just carefully and slowly traced the pattern. Now, if you want to do it an easier way, you could print that pattern out, print that image out, and that way you wouldn't have to do the tracing part. But in order to get the look that I wanted, of course, I'm going to have to use some paint to get that background. This is plaster Waverly chalk paint, which is my favorite neutral color, and I wanted it to not be stark white so that it would actually look a little more aged even from the get-go. Now, I was being super careful, but later I used a little sanding block to distress the edges, so I wouldn't have had to be that careful, but I tried to do a neat job if I could. And I got just a nice basic coat onto the top. I also was able to use, and it just took one coat to cover the bears. I sanded because they were kind of raised up. Now, to get that pattern onto the top of my box, you can use graphite paper and that kind of thing, but I love to use the sewing tracing paper, and that can be found in Walmart's Sewing Notions aisle for a couple of dollars. And I taped my tissue paper onto the top so that it would be in the exact position that I wanted it in. And then I just slid that tracing paper under with the colorful side down, obviously. Slid that under there and used a pencil to go over all the pattern. Now, when I traced that, it wasn't the neatest job, but I knew that I would be able to correct it while transferring and also while doing the actual art. Now, I got a little bit done and realized it would make better sense to reach over about 6 inches from where my hand was anyway and get a colored pencil so that I could more easily see where I had traced and where I hadn't. So I used that one until it got too dull, and then I had to switch over to a green one. The stripes are very irregular, and that would normally bug me like everything, but I decided to just go with the primitive look of it and not let it bother me. I used flamenco red and English navy, and for the black parts I'm literally using a Sharpie. I feel I have more control with it for all those tiny lines, so that's what I did. You can see I've got my tablet right there beside me so that I can refer to the original picture. And I'm not sure, some of that was already so primitive and kind of distressed off that I couldn't really tell, so I got to use my own creative license and my own imagination. Now the ribbons that are blue, I went ahead and outlined those in black, and the little stars that were going to be blue, I outlined those in black. I mean, that's just up to you if you wanted to do that or not. But I'm a happy crafter. I'm not a precise crafter. I enjoy myself, and I don't worry about whether things are perfect. And in this situation where it's supposed to look rustic and primitive, you're okay. Now, one of those stripes is quite crazy, but I just decided I was not going to let it bother me. Now, you've seen me do this before. The nutmeg brown and the elephant gray make really good grunge colors. So if you water it down and then take a very wet rag and wipe it off pretty quickly, you can get a nice grungy aged effect. And you're going to have to blend that in. And that one, in one spot I rubbed it kind of hard and it went all the way down to the wood layer, that was still okay with me. But you can see I'm just kind of streaking it on and then wiping it away. And I paid a little more attention, put a little heavier amounts of color at the bottom edge and a little at the top edge, which the top edge in my case is not going to matter much because I decided to use it with the lid on. But if you wanted to use it with the lid propped up against the side, that top edge would show. Okay, and so doing the same thing, putting more of the grungy stuff around the edges and a little bit toward the center. I realized then that I had forgotten to put any stars, and it's so tiny that I just decided to use the tip, the other end, opposite end of a paintbrush, and just put some little dot stars on there. And they're irregular, they're not all the same size, and I didn't care. I'm telling you, I'm not a precise crafter, I'm a happy crafter. Okay, here comes the toothbrush with the watered down grunge formula. And if you dip your toothbrush in there and then flick it onto the surface that you want to make it look old, something about those specks looks so authentic to me. I love the effect of using a toothbrush to spatter up. And here I go with that sanding block. You can see that it really makes a difference over the things that you've just freshly painted. Well, I mean, they had time to dry. Acrylic paint on that chalk paint background, it dried nearly instantly. I mean, within a couple minutes it was dry to the touch. And rubbing over it with the sanding block distresses it down enough to where it looks like authentic age. I felt like it gave it a really nice look. And there we are. Now I'm going to go ahead and put back a few of the speckles that I sanded off. I could have sanded before I speckled, but you know, who has time for those kind of plans? I think that this one turned out really cute. In any case, I love it a whole lot more than those teddy bears that came on it. But I've got some patriotic and vintage things on my mantle. That's where that is. And that ginormous, outrageous TV that my husband, you know, he lives in my house too. I have to be reasonable. He wants the big TV, so there it is. I love the way that little thing looks. It's so cute. Okay, now comes the story of the red vintage chair. I bought this chair for something like $5. It had this crazy piece of wood nailed onto the top because the round bottom under there had burst through, had broken. So I'm using acrylic paint. I'm sure you'll notice the chaotic background. I would say that's not typical, but that is actually typical of my home. We're a busy household, we're a big family, there's a lot of stuff, so just, you know, deal with it as you can. This acrylic paint grabbed on to the original brown dry finish, and when it dried, you know, you see when I'm putting it on there, it's kind of glossy, kind of rich, and then by the time it got dry, in just a few minutes, it had absorbed into that chair into a very authentic primitive color, which I was very happy with. So, I mean, I would have been happy with it the brighter, but I really, really loved the more muted color that it turned out to be. So I just sat in my living room. You can see the dogs just wandering around like they always do. They have to be within, you know, 10 feet of me at all times. I do find it really relaxing to paint. I am not even squeezing my paint out into a bowl or anything. I'm just squeezing that bottle until it kind of bubbles up to the top and dipping my brush in that. And if some of you crafters are concerned about contamination, well, I assure you it almost never crosses my mind that I might contaminate my paint. I use it up pretty quickly, except for that one jar of nutmeg brown that will last the rest of my natural life and probably my grandchildren's life. But there are lots of little nooks and crannies, and I was actually very happy to do all the detail work on that. I did come back and use my little sanding block, the sponge sanding block that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and I did distress it later. But look, here's a look at that. I don't think it's leather. I think it's some material that's kind of made to look like leather, and it burst through. And for this project, there's that one spot. I was trying to decide whether I needed to do something about that white paint stain there or not, but I didn't. I will later try to do something to replace and make a replacement that looks like, isn't that pretty? Look at that carving, that looks great. But for this project, I did not replace that round bottom yet, but I plan to. There's the original sticker, said $4.98. I was right. I did pay about $5 for it. But I knew I would put decor on it, and when I told my son Joel, he saw me sitting it there, and I said, now listen, this chair is not actually for sitting. He said, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, a chair that's not for sitting. I said, well, just believe me. But on my father-in-law's 90th birthday, which was here at my house, someone did sit in it, and the thing burst through even more. The wood is strong, it's just that bottom was not strong, but I'm gonna do a replacement for the bottom. I am loving that little basket. That's so cute. Okay, now this, when I say hanging basket, I realize that you might mistake it for like a plant, which there is an asparagus plant. Look at that. It's huge. It's doing great. But I'm talking about that little aged shallow basket that is designed to be hung on the wall. It actually has a little placard under the heart, is a little placard that says wine, and we don't even drink, but and I've just been using it plain like that with those faux sunflowers, and I guess that's mums, chrysanthemums, and a few eucalyptus. But for the 4th of July, that little ornament thing came from Hobby Lobby, and then I just have lots of flags that I use. Be sure to watch my first Americana Thrift Flips video. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box. And I'm also working on a little bit of a home tour of my 4th of July decor. There's a sneak peek of some of the things that I have arranged. I want to thank all of you for watching. I appreciate all of you so much. You always have such sweet and encouraging things to say. And I do want to pray blessings over your life, that you would enjoy crafting and being used by the Lord in ways to bless others, and making sure that we are a river that flows, so that the things that come into our home, we also allow things to go out of our home to bless others, and we can still in the meantime enjoy all our crafting and our collecting. But I do believe that that would be one of the ways that you can find a lot of joy and fulfillment in this life.